I interviewed Mark Washington, and one thing as I was getting prepared, he's the city manager of Grand Rapids, the first black city manager of Grand Rapids, and it got me thinking about all the firsts. For one, anyone who thinks there's not racism still existing, we're still experiencing a lot of firsts in our own community,
We really
right?
are. Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
firsts. First female mayor.
Yep.
First black city manager. First black city attorney.
Yes.
Who's the supervisor controller dude, right? He's a new position, not the comptroller, but the you know what I'm talking about.
You're talking
he
about.
works for Mark. I think.
Yeah, you're talking about
Oversight.
Brandon Davis.
Brandon.
Yeah.
First black city police chief.
Correct.
Our city commissioners, if you just look at them, must be the most diverse, I think, in our city's history.
Ever.
Gender,
Yes.
racially,
Yes.
backgrounds. That's a lot of firsts for a 170-year-old city. Grand Rapids, 170 years old. How is it, Joe, in your opinion, that we get to 170 years old in the city of Grand Rapids and we're still having waves of firsts with minorities in different segments of the community having a seat at the table? Why is this, Joe?
You know, I believe it speaks to the fact that our city, in many ways, has historically been a place that is relatively closed. And so, as you know, Grand Rapids is very relational. Some would say that it's really hard to break into the city. There's the old saying that if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much. And so, as you know, in terms of people of color, I've always thought that there has been a history of a lack of opportunity, in particular for African Americans and Latinx in our beloved community. And, you know, to be the first, you know, within the last 5 years, it's a celebration, but it's also it's sad, you know, because to your point, 170 years, you know, a new millennium, what the heck? And we're just getting to being, you know, to having certain, barriers being broken.
Yeah.
But yet, if you look at it, I think from the perspective that I try to look at it, it is, you know, it's progress. Maybe not the pace that we all want it, but it does speak to
I think that's
progress.
it's an optimistic way to put a veneer on it, but it's still, to me, I'm speaking personally, I'm not speaking for you, it's kind of sad.
It is.
It
is.
And it just, to people in the community who may be on the fence about, well, I don't really see it. I don't really see the, you know, the problems, or I don't see where the barriers are, or where there's, you know, systematic things. These are all like hot terms right now. Some people get real inflamed about them. Other people go, what do you mean by systematic thing? Well, let's figure this out. You know, what do you mean that we're repeating cycles like this, which we are. But to me, it's not just sad, but it's just also, it speaks to the invisibility of some of these barriers that we face as a community, because they're ingrained in us, and especially to white folk, if I can be white people. I can say folk, can I?
I'd say it all the time, brother, without the S. That's the proper way to say it, folk. That's right.
Okay. You know, I mean, it's unless you experience the bumping into those barriers, which you never will if you're white or live in a different part of the city, or you're in the suburbs, not going to experience it. The Full Exposure Podcast is brought to you by Metro Health, University of Michigan Health, and Dr. Peter Hahn, in appreciation of the creative and artistic visionaries who enrich our lives through cultural connections.